Hello, welcome. My name is Nadia Harris, and I'm the founder of remoteworkadvocate.com. And I have been invited to talk about a super important topic, which is called resilience and grit strategies for thriving in the face of startup challenges. So, why this topic and why me? Since, well, some of you probably know me from remote work topics. Well, because remote work is present in different startups all around the world. I've had the pleasure of working with numerous startups in different cultural circles, so to say, in different countries and in different scenarios, both good and bad ones. And this is the reason why today I would like to share insights for you that hopefully will add value if you are about to start your startup journey, if you've already started, or maybe you're thinking, oh, is it actually for me or is it actually for you, right? And by the way, I also have my own brand, which is technically also a startup. It's more a consulting company, but still definitely not a corporation. So all the experiences, I will bring them together and try to tell you how to approach the aspect of resilience and grit and why it's so important not to sugarcoat that, yes, we'll just, fundraise millions, become the next unicorn and have loads of money. Because although it looks amazing on paper at first glance, and especially all over social media, it's really not that way. And it actually requires a lot of work. Okay, I hope that you're ready. Let's get started. So the first thing that I want to really discuss with you is resilience. Like, what is it? We have to define this properly. So I created a super short definition. To me, resilience means being able to get through tough times quickly and keep going strong. Okay, super simple, super simple. But the thing is that tough times and quickly and stay strong. Like, how do you do this? Like, how do you make sure that you're not going to mentally collapse, that you're not going to give up, right? So resilience is everything but not giving up. So in other words, if you are part of a startup, if you have your own startup, you have to be resilient to make sure that you're not going to get upset when things get super difficult, because most probably they will. And when we look at the statistics, of course, we will know that about 90% of startups fail. And here, what's interesting, when you dig deeper into these statistics and when you actually Google it, you're going to see that 10% of startups fail within the first year, and then the rest fails within the second year. So when you survive the first year, you may think like, wow, this is so amazing. I'm definitely not part of these 90 startups that are categorized as they're going to fail. Well, sorry to tell you this, but this may actually happen anytime. This happens both with bootstrap startups, with unicorns, with those that you've seen these amazing headlines and you thought like, wow, how have they reached that top of that hill? 1 second gone they are, right? So you never know. And it's really a bumpy journey. So again, resilience should be your key feature. It's not going to be a quick win. It's not going to happen overnight that you're just suddenly be successful. You may think that's the case, but 1 month later or 5 months later, things may turn around super quickly. So the thing is that you have to be resilient, you have to be agile. We'll talk about it in a moment. Okay, and so this is the reason why that resilience and grit are critical for entrepreneurs facing the uncertainties of starting and growing a business, because nothing is certain in a startup, right? Today, you may feel that you know it all, you got it all, you found your niche, you know that the market is there, you got some money, you have a great idea, you already have a great brand, and then it turns out that things are going sideways for whatever reason. And there are loads of components that can lead to both success and failure, which is fine. But then the idea is, as a founder and as an entrepreneur, to understand and to be able to identify all these things and how they connect. And of course, what I will do today is I'll also share some stories, some really positive stories, but also negative, terrible stories that I have also gone through myself and with companies that I worked with, something for you to do or not to follow at all, ever. Okay. And so now it's time for like a super concise agenda. So what challenges can you expect? I mean, you may think this is a no-brainer because basically all kinds of challenges, but but we'll define them a little bit deeper. The need to stay agile and adapt to uncertainty, right? You have to adapt to uncertainty. I mean, and this is one of the things that most people don't understand, and also most team members within startups don't understand, because we strive for stability, right? And although I say that on today's market, where we see the tech industry, what's been happening within the past few years, both startups and corporations, renowned corporations, stable corporations, are laying people off, right? So nothing is certain. We don't want to accept it as human beings, and we're striving for certainty. We hope that, we will know for sure what's going to happen. Well, if you are about to start your own startup, you have to be ready that you're just going to fly, and let's see how long and how far you get, because you're just not going to know. And the same thing will apply to your team members. So hire team members with the right mindset, okay? And I'll dig into this a little bit later as we go on, as we move on with the presentation, because I will share with you some situations that happened with team members being part of startups, not really being a right fit, and how you can identify all this at first glance. So now moving on to most common startup challenges. The first one, and one of the most important ones, although I think all of them are equally important, but the first one you'll see right away. This is the one that you'll see right away when it happens. Like, it's evident. Funding and cash flow management. And here, funding, as obvious as it is, right? If you're bootstrapped, probably funding isn't going to refer to your business, but still, I mean, we can look at it from a fundraising perspective, but also funding, like, your you have to have some kind of money to start and also to grow and everything. So it's also going to be cash flow management. And what happens here? What happens here is very interesting, because I've seen many young founders who got an amount of money, and they were so happy that it was so much money that the first thing they did is they literally went and bought themselves a new business car. What can I say? A really expensive one, because now they are the founder of this amazing brand. Consequently, terrible cash flow issues within the next few months and the inability to pay people. Is this responsible? No. Prioritize and think, right? Evaluate everything from a risk perspective. When you hire people, what is the core? How do you spend the money? I'll talk about it in a second. But then also, when you look at cash flow, when you look at the cash flow perspective, it's everything that contributes to it. Like, how much does it cost you to produce a certain product or to produce certain goods, right? That's the first thing. So what's the cost of that versus how do your customers pay you? How often do they pay you, right? And I've seen in many businesses that this was a super big issue. Like, we have completely underestimated the cost that we have to bear versus the pricing towards the client, for example, or equally, the clients weren't paying, and it was super difficult to collect that debt, which resulted in terrible cash flow issues. And then that is also connected to all the things that you see below. For example, from a legal compliance perspective, not being able to pay employees, for example, not being able to maintain business operations in general, and loads of other problems. So always make sure that you're ready for the worst case scenario. Don't get too optimistic when you have money in your bank account. And again, I know you don't want me to say it, because you'll be like, oh, I have so much money in my bank account, it's just going to be fine, right? We'll just keep hiring, right? Well, that may change very quickly. So really do that wisely. Always evaluate the risk. I've also worked with a company that experienced a super high demand for their services during the pandemic, which was because of the growth of the online market, basically. But they thought it's because of the fact that they were hiring more and more people, which was wrong. And they thought they estimated things in the wrong way, because they thought the more people we hire, the more services the people will do, the more money we will make. But it was actually quite the opposite, because it turned out that the demand was so huge that it really wasn't connected to what the people produced. And so they hired hundreds of people. And then 2 years later, because of the fact that the pandemic ended, people stopped using that kind of service online. They suddenly had to keep laying people off. And consequently, a few years later, the company doesn't exist anymore. Seriously. So always think about it. The product market fit, super interesting. You think you have it. You have it in theory. For sure you do. Or at least it would be wise to have it when you're starting your business, that you have your product market fit. But it may turn out that you have it on paper, you have it in your head, you evaluated the market, and you have the hard data, but it may turn out that in real life that goes completely wrong. And also remember that your product market fit on one market may not be a product market fit on another market, right? I've seen this with different products, with different services. You always have to consider the cultural aspect, the social aspect as well. And this is very interesting, because here I've seen services that were priced a certain way in a certain country, where the decisions for the buyers, mostly were made because of the price, right? The price had to be low. So that company decided to go to another market and say, hey, we will just, beat the competition because we have such a low price. But on that market, it wasn't the price that was the most important thing, for example, right? Was something completely different. So although the product was great, the pricing strategy was terrible, and the entire strategy was terrible in general. So it was just a massive failure. Another thing, when you look at different products that are fancy right now in a certain market, it may turn out that they completely don't even refer to the mindset and to the needs of the people elsewhere. So this is also very important. So the product market fit may be great if it's local, international, not really. You always have to think about it, and you always have to evaluate it deeper. The fact that something works here doesn't mean it's going to work there. If you have the money to find that out and try, give it a shot. But if you're thinking that like magic, you just have, success in front of you, that yes, it's going to be exactly the same story. No, may not be the case. And then, of course, customer acquisition and retention. Super, super, super interesting. Also, from my perspective, what I can say, and now this is like a smaller business, right? From my perspective, in terms of customer acquisition, I haven't really found out what the golden approach here is, because I work with so many companies, both corporations and startups as well. So with corporations, the buying process is a little bit longer. I mean, for them to buy a service from me, for example, like either an online course or consulting or whatever. Whereas with startups, it may be a little bit easier, but not always. Turns out that sometimes, again, you may run into cash flow issues, because then they won't pay. And then how do you retain them? And then obviously, when you think about both customer acquisition and retention, obviously think about the whole team. So think about your talent. And here it may be like, for heaven's sake, and I've seen that again in several startups. Let me share the story with you real quick. So once I worked with a company where the CEO actually approached me, and he said, I have a terrible problem, because I hired this absolute rock star who is a salesperson, and that person worked for a huge renowned automotive company. And they were like so successful as the head of sales. But this person isn't really selling my medical devices, right? And then I thought, hey, let me just evaluate this real quick. And it turned out that that business owner, that CEO, needed a hunter, not someone from a big brand, a big name, having a team of 50 people managing the people, right? So although you would look at someone, that's from, this person's coming from this big brand, they must be super knowledgeable, it may turn out that they won't just fit into your industry. They may not even have the exact mindset. We'll get to the mindset thing in a second. And that may not even be a person who is even capable of delivering these things that you need in real life. So here, I always suggest that whenever you are planning to hire someone, talk about real life scenarios. Say, hey, this is what you're going to do. How are you going to approach it? Like, work on case studies, and not case studies retroactively trying to find out what someone did in the past. No, what do you have to do right now, right? And find this out. Compliance and legal challenges. And I am an HR professional, but I am also a lawyer, like an HR lawyer as well. And here I could talk about loads of things referring to compliance and legal challenges from like a startup perspective, but even let me focus on the HR stuff. Terrible, 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 terrible. Hiring whomever, wherever, however. This is completely ridiculous. And then it turns out that social contributions aren't paid. People, I don't know, you're not, startup owners are not paying taxes, for example, the right way, or misclassification issues, employment misclassification issues, penalties, for example, or intellectual property gets stolen because no one thought about the fact that, oh, they met this amazing person that they wanted to hire, and that this person will just come and take all the knowledge and go directly to the competition. I've seen all that happening. So think about it, because that's like super important. And I know that you just want to get it over with, just have someone on board and just move on. But the sad truth is that if you don't do it right, it will backfire. So at least think about the basics, whether this is secure. And this is, I know that most people don't look at it as, money spent wisely in the very beginning, but I mean, it really is, because then I don't even want to get into, business scaling now, which is like a huge issue as well. But then if you have compliance and legal challenges, then you also have an issue with scaling, even from a talent perspective. See, now I work with several remote first companies that are startups. So they started with 5, 10 team members. Now they have 50, because they had no pay strategy and hiring strategy from the very beginning. Also in terms of compliance, in terms of pay and everything, it's a complete mess right now. You don't know how to pay whom and where and how to fix that, right? And so this is definitely something to consider. And then obviously the rest, so market competition, product development, everything, and product adaptation as well. So yeah, I mean, you shouldn't be following the competition, like doing exactly what they do, but I mean, you should be aware, of their pricing, their progress, and everything that they do. I mean, you should at some stage know what's going on. So you have to keep your eyes wide open. And here about this slide, everything is connected. Like one thing drives the other, one thing drives the other. So you just have to be super agile and kind of, have like a super brain to make sure all this is connected wisely and that it makes sense. So what do you have to do to make all that happen? And here, of course, you have to stay agile and you have to adapt. Market insights, data, and testing, right? So you always have to know what's happening on the market, right? You have to have your data. If something is not selling, why isn't it selling? You have something new, you have to test it, you have to find out. So as I said in the very beginning, things on paper, like even the product market fit, may look great, but until you have your data and you test it on the market, you won't know. I mean, you cannot know. So I mean, don't be extremely optimistic. I remember when I had my own startup for a very short period of time, because I also quit like after a year and a half, because I have decided to pursue my consultancy business, but that was actually an AI startup, and AI and recruitment software, maybe that way, a couple of years ago. And so we had these Excel sheets where everything was like pre-programmed, designed so well, but then, you can't really play with those numbers, because those are all projections. Everything may change, right? So again, I'm not saying that I left it because it failed. It didn't, but it just wasn't something that I wanted to do at that stage. So just to make it clear. But even if it failed, I mean, hey, I would have more insights with you to share. But I don't know what happened afterwards, because I literally left and did something else. a root cause analysis is important each and every single time. I mean, you can't keep repeating the same mistakes. A root cause analysis. Why? I mean, every single day you should wake up, open your eyes, and ask yourself the question, why? Why are people buying this? Why am I selling this? Why is this situation looking this way? What drives what, you know? So all the time you have to take a look at it and the logic, right? If you identify that something is broken, I mean, play with data and test and analyze and go back always to see what worked, what didn't, and what are all the patterns. If you can find any matching patterns. Interestingly, a lot of stuff today AI can also help you with, definitely in terms of the analysis, but I mean, you still have to use your brain. Prioritize and evaluate risks, right? Something, and this is something that I recommend to all of you. I mean, as I've said, you can never be sure about anything in a startup. As a matter of fact, you can't be sure about anything in life, okay? Nothing is stable, although we'd like it to be, right? Maybe for a moment it is, but it doesn't have to be the case always. Usually it's not. When you look at everything that's happening in your company, look at it from a risk perspective. Is something high risk or is something low risk, right? And based on that, think whether it's also a priority or not, because you may have something that is actually not a priority, and it's low risk, right? But for some reason you have it on your plate and it takes so much time. Why should you even do that? For example, let me give you this example. You're going through an audit, you may get a fine, right? You may have to pay, I don't know, 5,000 euros, right? But if you take a look at, and that's the maximum you can pay, right? If you did something wrong, I don't know, with whatever, right? But your team costs you much, much, much more. To take the time of your team and dedicate their time into this, it's just not even worth it. It's not a priority, right? So always think about it from that perspective. And also when you invest the money, when you hire people, when you think about your product, your service, think what is high, what is low risk, like what do you have to lose? Within a startup, you can usually lose everything. Okay, but that's the reason why how we balance, with the risk game and spend wisely. And I mean, I don't know how much I'd like to stress it. As a matter of fact, I could now delete the entire presentation and start with spend wisely as the biggest headline. I've seen literally everything, and I'm not playing smart here, but I've seen companies that spend millions of euros on get-togethers on islands with private jets and yachts and whatsoever, ridiculous employee benefits, ridiculous offices like, they could never afford to begin with. The first thing they invested in, that was also pre-pandemic, they invested in this expensive furniture and everything. Like, why would you do that? Just because it looks fancy? And of course these cars, expensive cars. If you're a CEO of a startup, a fancy startup, you have to have an expensive car so that everyone sees. No, don't do it like that, because very quickly you may run into issues. And again, I've seen companies spending so much money on things that were completely irrelevant. And even to this extent that, I go into some startups and I see all the subscriptions that they have. You wouldn't believe thousands and thousands and thousands of euros, spend on, I have no idea, some job boards, soft phones, compliance training for 500 people where they have 50 people, for example. I can't even tell you what else, but or lunch boxes that nobody eats, and they're just being, the subscription is paid on a regular basis, and people also who work remotely or who are in the office, they can eat it. There's loads of leftover. Why would you do that? And then you run out of cash. What happened? We have to lay off people, Don't do it. And also with spending wisely, I also mean hire wisely. And I know exactly how a startup works also from a growth and fundraising perspective, that you have to show growth. So you have to hire and hire and hire. At least that's the way it also was within the past few years. But look, where are all these companies right now? Most of them are laying off people also because of that. So, I mean, it's a numbers game, but I mean, at the end of the day, just, just use your brain. I mean, I hate to say it again, not willing to insult anyone, but just think what you're doing, and also think what the risk is. Like, you as a business owner, to me as an entrepreneur, you are responsible for your people. If you're playing a game with your people, and I've done this as well in the past. For example, I was a couple of years ago, I was working with a startup, and I was informed that I had to help hiring. I was responsible for the hiring strategy to hire people all over Europe. I think 10, 15 people, 10 salespeople. And so, of course, I did that. I found them, I headhunted them and everything, and amazing, perfect. And then what happened is that these people never joined because, unfortunately, the company ran out of money. But these people already quit their jobs before they signed the contracts, and they were waiting for the company, for the startup to sign the contract as well. And and what I did is having my role in the past, which was related to talent, I was calling these people alone at night and saying, at night, I mean in the evening, after work, and saying that that's the situation and that my extreme apologies and everything. But what I heard from the founder? I heard that they're adults, they'll live, and this is terrible irresponsibility. And I just don't think it's nice to play with someone else's money, that you are a millionaire if you're not, right? So that's just what I would like to say. And it's very important to identify these things. If you see these things, you should talk about that loudly, rather than pretend that, oh, you'll just keep your mouth shut because someone is the big person having the time of their lives, of their life, using other people, taking advantage of them. Just some stories. I told you I would share the good and bad ones. So this is real life, not something that I've seen with my own eyes and heard with my own ears, right? So hire for the right mindset. It's super important to stress for the people that a startup is not a regular 9 to 5 corporate jobs. I hear this a lot also with small startups, where people come to me and they say, okay, like, what benefits will I get? Again, in the US, the situation is a little bit different, because when we talk about healthcare, for example, it's like super important. So people want to have that. And if you're a good startup, you give it, right? But in Europe, if they ask you, oh, I don't know, will I have this or that, meal allowance or whatever. I'm like, people like, are you out of your mind? I mean, this is not a corporate job. You have to go the extra mile. You have to have the drive to do things, right? So hire doers and generalists. Why generalists? You may not want someone who is like, and I don't mean to insult anyone, but super narrow-minded from this perspective, that they just know their own area. Because in a startup, especially when you're starting off with a smaller team, people need to juggle. You may be everyone, and you will have to probably wear many hats, right? So that's why it's important to have generalists. Foster flexibility and diversity. Again, no 9 to 5. 5:01, thank you, bye-bye, I'm leaving, or I'm closing my laptop if you're remote, whatever. And I suggest you should be remote or flexible. I mean, that's like a no-brainer as a startup. But that would be a different topic. And diversity. If you don't believe and you don't know why diversity helps in startup growth, then go check the statistics of BCG and you'll know right away. I won't dig into this, but it's like a no-brainer to me at that stage. Build a reliable core team. Stress intrinsic motivation. Again, not the carrot and stick approach, but intrinsic motivation. Like, why are you here? Like, what drives you? Is the idea of the startup captivating? Like, why are you on board? Why do you want to be part of this team? Like, what are you bringing to the table? What can we do together, right? So geeks, people that love what they do, right? And because this is the biggest power of every startup, that you have to believe in what you do. Like, believe, right? Rather than just have someone, oh, I'll do you a favor that I came here, just pay me more money, or I go to a different company. That may work as well short term, but it's probably not going to be your core team. Yeah, learn fast from failing fast. That is a good one, because at some point you will fail for sure. You may fail big, so your company won't exist, your startup won't exist, but you may fail small, and that means there will be different failures on the way. Like, you'll burn loads of money, I can tell you that already, even if you're wise from the very beginning. You'll hire the wrong people, hire the wrong agencies, for example. that it's just, I mean, it's just the cost of a startup and of every company basically in general, right? And that's fine, but learn fast. Don't repeat the same mistakes. It's fine to make mistakes, but if you keep making the same mistakes over and over and over again, you have a problem, right? So if something doesn't work, change it. Change it. You will see that something's not working. You'll see that there is a disconnect. Then change it, and test all the time. And I can't stress enough how much I believe in a data-driven approach. Nothing based on your gut feeling. I mean, based on your gut feeling, you may have your idea, right? Nice, but then go test it, right? Don't spend all the money and run into implementation big time without testing. And no time to cry, but stand up and move on. Excuse me. And this is a super difficult one because everybody's going through ups and downs. I'm going through ups and downs as well. Everybody is, and people don't talk about it openly. I see now recently more and more individuals sharing their stories and saying like how they don't sleep at night, or how they sleep 4 hours at night, and how they can't, switch off, and they're stressed out, and that happens for founders, for each and every single founder and each and every single startup. Although everything will be branded super well and sugar coated, but that is not the case. The question is, how resilient are you, so that you know that even if you feel bad because you failed small or bigger, or something is just not working out the way you wish, or you're just tired, you're able to forget it and move on and just make the right choices. That's it. This QR code will bring you to my website as well, which again is about the future of work and everything related to businesses and hiring in the future. So today, I believe that the future is today, not old school, whatever that means. It's been a pleasure.